gave them this space.
Roll call.
Councilmember Kemp. Here. Councilmember Ranagi.
Present.
Councilmember Whalen.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones. Mayor Orgill.
Here. Okay, we'll have Bob Whalen lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand and join me in the pledge. Put your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Closed session announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council convened in closed session pursuant to the 3 items listed on the agenda. In advance of closed session, there was about 20 minutes of public comment relating to item 1. The City Council convened in a closed session approximately 4:20 and discussed the items listed on the agenda with respect to item 2B. Councilmember Kempf recused herself due to a potential conflict of interest relating to her personal residence. There was, there was no reportable action on any of the items.
Thank you. Any additions and deletions?
Mr. Mayor, there are none.
Okay, then we'll move on to the comments from council. Public, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself.
If you want to speak on something not on the agenda, come on up to the podium.
Comments on non-agendized items?
Hello. My name is Ann Christoph, and we haven't given a report on the garden park for a long time, so I thought I would do that today. And I'm handing out some flyers of some upcoming events at the garden that I invite you to participate in if you like. And I'd like you to know that we've been having various activities, and one of the ones that we've done is we've gone to the city of Dana Point to visit their community garden to see how they run it. And that was last weekend, and it was really interesting. They have city-owned land that they were given by the city to have the garden. The city builds it. The city helps take care of it. We asked them, do you have a nonprofit to help with the garden? They said, well, we don't need one, because if we need anything, the city just takes care of it. So that was kind of inspiring. We're very happy with the garden we have, and we're happy with your support, but urge you to step up and do it if we ever have a chance to buy it again. So on the March 23rd, March 21st, we're having the Community Spring Fling potluck with the garden band and all the traditional goodies that people bring. And it's, what is it, from 2 to 5? And then we're having this Saturday at 3 o'clock, there is a workshop on infused honey and we have a herb grower who is going to be presenting that workshop. So those are some of the things that are coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon and thank you. I'm Mike Ruff. I'm here to show you OCPA's latest rates as published by SCE, their SCE estimates. See the handout. On one side, it's for residential charges, and for the other side, it's for commercial charges. According to SCE estimates, for residents, OCPA Basic is $25 per month higher than SCE. Smart Choice, $30 per month higher than SCE. 100% renewables is $33 per month higher. OCPA is charging an average resident $300 to $400 per year more than SCE charges. And on the other side of the handout is the SCE commercial comparison. According to SCE, OCPA Basic is $28 per month higher than SCE. Smart Choice is $38 per month higher than SCE. 100% renewables is $42 per month higher. OCPA is charging an average resident an average commercial business $335 to $500 per year more than SCE. OCPA's current pricing harms businesses and residents. Why these high prices? Yesterday at the OCPA board meeting, OCPA was projecting a $34 million loss on June 30th, the end of its current fiscal year. OCPA has to charge very high prices to try to improve its finances. I recommend you table discussion of OCPA until its finances substantially improve and its rates are lower than SCE. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. I'm Vicki Johnson. I spoke before about opposing Laguna Beach potentially joining the Orange County Power Authority to replace SCE as the electricity provider for Laguna Beach. In February, the council tasked the ESG, Environmental Sustainability Group, with evaluating OCPA. I attended the February meeting where OCPA presented again and talked for about an hour. The ESG committee acknowledged a study of OCPA will be a big effort. I recommend you table discussion of OCPA and not proceed with tasking the ESG with evaluating OCPA. Why? OCPA is under financial duress. At the board meeting just yesterday, and you have a handout, they're projecting a $34 million loss for ending in June 30th. That's the end of their fiscal year. An astonishing $34 million lost. Their reserves will have fallen by half, from 90 to 45 million. Because of these losses, they've raised their prices quite a bit above SCE, hundreds of dollars more per year for an average resident or business. This is not affordable, and opt-outs from OCPA will likely ensue, weakening their finances further. Because of these losses, OCPA is purchasing tens of millions of renewable energy certificates. That's like paper energy instead of physical renewables. And OCPA's latest emissions data shows that OCPA's cheapest plans, their emissions have been worsening every year for the last few years and exceeding SCE. Fourth, and this I think is very important to me, OCPA was not forthcoming at the January City Council meeting with you or at the ESG meeting. OCPA did not disclose their pricing to you. now significantly higher than OCPA. OCPA did not disclose the large projected losses for this fiscal year. They didn't even hint at that to you. OCPA did not explain how their emissions compared to SCE. OCPA, in my opinion, was not forthcoming or transparent to Laguna Beach, nor have I seen them be particularly open with other cities that they're courting. Partnering with an agency like OCPA that doesn't disclose these material facts exposes Laguna Beach to considerable risk. I recommend you table discussion of OCPA until they stabilize and improve, and not proceed with tasking the Environmental Sustainability Group with evaluating OCPA, because it's a big piece, it's a lot of work. And for these other problems, I think OCPA should not be embraced by Laguna Beach at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Any other speakers? None. We'll close public comments. Bring it back to council comments, starting with city manager,
I don't have any comments tonight.
city attorney.
No comments tonight, Mr. Mayor.
No report this evening.
Just to break the trend pursuant to legal requirements, I was in Sacramento yesterday and today with the Association of California Cities, Orange County. So it was a group of council members and other individuals who are involved in that group to go for their annual lobbying conference in Sacramento. It was very informative trip. We had a briefing from our state controller, Malia Cohen. She indicated that the state of California's the current budget year we under budgeted in terms of our expenses, which is a good thing, but then we also over budgeted in terms of our we under budgeted in terms of our revenues, but we over budgeted in terms of our expenses. So it's kind of a wash. But we're going to have very significant budget issues in the coming years. Even though this current year, I think, will be in good shape. So one of the questions is the extent to which there will be money for cities to get earmarks, and that doesn't seem very likely. But I think we'll see what happens next. And then I also, one of the other there were many meetings and interesting conversations. Another one was with Assemblywoman Wicks, who's the chair of the Assembly Budget Committee, who's been involved in a lot of the housing legislation. And I asked her about what she thinks about whether future pieces of housing legislation will have a savings clause for cities under the coastal zone. And her answer was probably not a good one for the city of Laguna Beach, which is probably not. So I think that's going to be an evolving conversation about how we can ensure that we protect coastal resources and protect the goals enshrined in the Coastal Act while still complying with state law. So always an interesting trip, and happy to answer any specific questions that my colleagues up here have. But I think the bad news is there's probably not going to be earmark opportunities for the city in this upcoming budget. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, member. Councilmember Whalen.
Just a couple of things. The mayor and I were both at the Laguna Art Museum annual auction Saturday night. It was a well-attended event, really fun, and 120 artists there. I think a lot of art sold that night. And then speaking of earmarks, I don't know if we've acknowledged it publicly, but I think we got a notice from the city manager. So Congressman Dave Min had requested a couple of earmarks in the federal budget for the city, which was terrific. And I think we got, check me on these numbers, Dave. I think we had $850,000 for Laguna Canyon Road Project Connect, and $850 for the fire station number 4 as federal money. So that's going to be great. And then I just thought maybe I'd ask current status on Fire Station 4, because some people I know have been asking, and maybe you can explain why we're not yet able to demolish the building.
Do you want to take that one, Mr. McAvoy? Be careful about our avian friends. Don't denigrate them.
Not at all. Not at all. So we,
have to do biological monitoring before starting demolition. And when we did our biological survey, there was an active bird's nest on the site. And so we had to hold off start of demolition. It's a hummingbird nest. And so even though they're not endangered, it's an active bird nest. So we had to wait for the bird to lay its eggs and complete the cycle of kicking those small birds out of the nest. So the bird nest is empty as of yesterday. So we're working on the contractor coming back out, and we're looking at potentially middle of next week.
And we're making sure there are no more birds' nests on site,
There will be no
active or
more
otherwise.
active
Or-
bird's nest on site.
brush or trees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for the update. That's all I had.
Okay, great. I'll go over my activities over the last couple of weeks. I met yesterday with Adam Schwerner, Joe Hanauer, and Michael Irving regarding arts in general in Laguna Beach. I did attend the museum event that Bob mentioned. It was a great event. Also, yesterday we attended the Girl Scouts, had a small gathering up at their facility up here to, kind of show off their recent renovation. And it was nice to see, all of the community members that are a part of that association. I've never had the benefit of really meeting them in the past. The stewardship event at Rivian was great. It turned out very well received. I don't think I've ever received as many texts and emails on any other specific issue than that. I've had a Voice of Laguna, a couple of Voice of Laguna interviews, radio interview with down the street with Billy's radio. We had a couple centennial meetings planning for our upcoming centennial. Met with Amy Calvert and Anders Lassiter, Paulette Adams, Mark Seville from LCAD. We had Sue and I were with Dave Kiff on a neighborhood town hall with the Bluebird neighborhood. That I thought went very well. It was very well attended. Met with Nick Arnoff, Joe Hanauer, Chris Spilleri, Aaron Peluso, and Greg Viviani, John Thomas and Aaron Peluso. Several meetings with Sarah, the woman that's managing the promenade renovation. I attended Rick Conkey's birthday celebration. We had a meeting with several of the architects in town to discuss some of the challenges that we're having in community development. Really, it was information sharing just to help everybody understand the workflow and what we can do to better that situation. Met with Kathy Yurka and Maya from NCC, and I thought that was a very productive meeting regarding the renovation of the property, of the two historic properties, or quasi-historic properties, and the affordable housing project. But the conversation we had specifically related to just the renovation of the church. Community Land Trust meeting, revenue ad hoc meeting. We did attend, I went with Dave in community development. Public Works, I apologize, Mark and Tom from Public Works, and we went to Baumel Construction, and they're a company that specializes in parking structures. And we just wanted to get educated on what's out there, what different options are in pricing and just strategies. So that was a very, very insightful meeting. Had a meeting with Gary Jenkins, festival planning meeting, and last but not least, Karen Phillipson. So that concludes my meetings over the last several weeks. So we will move on. to
Mayor,
consent-
before you move on, can I say something?
Sure.
We are seeking applicants for the Orange County Vector Control Board. So if you're interested in serving on that, we have had a member of the public serve before, and then it went to a council member for a while. Now we're opening it back up to the public again. So if you're interested, please submit an application to my office, to the city clerk's office, no later than 4 o'clock on Friday, March 27th. And the council will make its interviews and appointments at its April 14th meeting. So thank you.
So after that announcement's made, then they can actually
Correct.
become-
So I put in a press release that they should expect to attend the April 16th meeting.
That was my question.
Yes.
Thank you. So I get the 19th meeting.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. I nominate Alex Renagi. Okay, consent calendar, any items to be pulled on the consent calendar?
I had three, 6, 10, and 12.
Any others? Any members of the public? None? Okay, 6, 10, and 12. Then do I have a motion?
Move
to
the
approve?
balance of the consent
Okay.
calendar.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously. Okay, well, let's move on to item number 6. Bob?
Yeah, I just had one, we got one, first of all, I'd like to we've got our two subcommittee members here, Kim and Steve, who they did a lot of work on this investment policy along with the treasurer. So wanted to thank you both for all the effort on that. I think it's a good document. We did get one comment in from Mary Locatelli that I thought made sense, and I know this is coming back to us on the whatever our next meeting is, 24th, I guess. In section 17, that she suggested we add at the end the phrase, as well as with sections 3 and 4 that describe the city's investment philosophy and objectives, which I think is consistent. This would be an add to section 17. So I would just suggest that when this come back, that language be included. That's all I had on that.
Any other comments from council? Are there any public comments on this?
I also want to thank the subcommittee because they did, I think, like 10 meetings. Did you have like 10 meetings? Okay, well, hopefully we won't have 10 meetings again. Okay, but thank you so much, you guys.
Okay, no public comments, so we'll bring it back to council. Do we have a motion?
Move the recommended action as amended.
Excuse me?
I don't think you opened it to the public.
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Move the recommended action as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, 10.
I just had one comment here. This is on the library improvements, design contract. And I noted in reading through the proposal, and I raised this with the city manager earlier today. So if you look at page 5 of the staff report, I think this is a good thing, but it's task B is to do a seismic evaluations during the initial 2-month, phase. And I just said, I don't have any idea what that's going to show or reveal, but if it shows the need for significant seismic work, I want to make sure that we can take a pause at that point before we go on and have, a design, a $500,000 design of something that may need a lot of seismic upgrade. So I don't know if Mark McAvoy may have something on that.
Sure. So first thing is when we purchased the library site, the building, there was a facility assessment done at that time. And so it did not note at that time seismic deficiencies that would be like cause for concern. And so we don't anticipate that being the case as we do this design work. During design work, all the improvements that will be designed by IDS will meet current building codes. And while we will do a seismic assessment to make sure that nothing was overlooked, we don't anticipate there being a large seismic upgrade needed. If there were, we would pause work.
Thank you, Mark.
Anything else? Are there any public comments on this issue? None, I'll bring it back to council.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Item 12.
Yeah, I'd actually like to have the fire department pros come up here. I have a few questions, or maybe they could run through this for us. We're changing. So we went through an RFP process, as outlined in the staff report. We're changing providers. I think anytime you lose the historic knowledge and experience, right, of the prior vendor. mean, so a couple things. I mean, first of all, the number that this winning bidder bid seemed significantly lower. It was like, 25% lower than the next bid. So, and they were about 75% of the next bid. So are we confident that they are going to be able to do the same quality of fuel modification with the goats and the number of passes and all that we've previously had, so that the quality of the work and the quantity, I guess, of the work is comparable to what we've had before?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with comments, and that is a great question. Councilmember Whalen, thank you for that. Yes, after reviewing the bid packages for all of the vendors, we do feel confident, and especially after looking at all their experiences and what they bring and what they have offered. The department actually does feel confident that they will be able to provide. And they had very, very strong recommendations on top of that as well. And the approach seems very, very doable and ideal to our conditions and to our community as well. We did scrutinize all of the bids, and we feel confident about this vendor. Absolutely.
Thank you. So my next question, I guess, comes to oversight. Maybe that's where you come in. But, they have to get the lay of the land. They have to understand, right, and I see some of that in the contract. They have to understand where the goats can go and where they can't go, and, all our various fuel mod zones. So can somebody describe for me a little bit how the oversight's going to work, particularly this initial year?
Yes, thank you. So under the direct supervision of Chris Gord, our inspector here, who's the specialist over fuel modification programs, projects, we will have a direct contact with them on daily basis. Our inspector will go out, connect with them prior to unloading any of the goats or bringing any equipment in. We have gone through all of the zones, all 10 zones, and strategically worked on where the staging will be and which zones we're going to have grazed first. So we have a priority of zones that we're going to address, and those have been clearly communicated with the vendor as well. And prior to any activities of moving from zone to zone, we'll have direct communication and direct supervision of the grazing program itself. The boundaries are clear. Inspector Gord is very familiar with our zones, so he will meet with the vendor on site daily. We'll be in daily communication, and not only telephonically, but also on site as well, site review. Absolutely.
And then in the past, we've had questions from the public often, right, about, hey, when you're going to get to my zone. Can you describe how that's going to be communicated to the public, the schedule?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. So our grazing as well as handwork zones, they always are updated on our city's website, on the fire department's webpage for the goat grazing as well as the hand crew zones. We will start this year, first week of April, if the council approves this program this evening. And they will start grazing the first week of April. And the first two zones that we're going to go ahead and take care of, it's going to be Zone 1 and Zone 2, and that's Dartmoor and the Skyline Alta Laguna zones. Those are our priority zones in this round, and that's where it'll start. And that will be reflected on the schedule on the city's website, and we will update that website routinely as we lay out the next zones as the goats move throughout the city strategically.
So people can just go to the fire department website and you'll constantly find the current latest schedule and when your area is going to be taken care of.
Absolutely.
And then a question maybe this was 22 or 23, we had the big wet winters and a lot of growth. And I think we upped the number of goats a couple of times. Do we have the flexibility to do that here?
Absolutely. In fact, I do feel a lot more confident with this particular new vendor because as part of the contract and bidding process, they will be providing up to 500 goats per herd, which is excellent. And we're going to get 2 herds right away to start this project and really manage and keep it within that time frame that we are set the expectations for them. Absolutely.
And then lastly, it was, thank you for attaching the images of the various zones. I mean, that was very helpful. And I know these are available on the website too, but I did note that zones 16 through 19, I think some of the language is outdated because it talks about us being, getting going on those in 2023. Can you just quickly run through, and maybe, so I'd request that we update those, but can you quickly just run through and tell us where we stand with 16 through 19?
Yes, absolutely. So this, I'm going to start with the 17 and 18, if you don't mind. Those zones have actually been established. And the report that you referred to, yes, it was actually reported or was completed back in October of 2022. It's a little bit outdated. However, as we complete our expansion zones, the department's intent is to update that report as well and get the latest information on there.
Robert, you want to just generally describe when you name a number where that zone is? for folks?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. So zone 17 and 18 that were completed are, apologize, I gotta get my list out. I don't know them all by name. So zone 17, which is Upper Bluebird, and 18, which is the South Bluebird, those were actually completed back in 2025. So they were initiated and completed in 2025. And zone 16, which is zone Hobo Canyon, and 19, which is Diamond Canyon. The status on those is that we're expecting to start zone 19 in July of this year. And that is under the governor's expansion or governor's suspension order. So as soon as we get that clearance from the California Natural Resources Agency for our permitting process, we'll start that in July. And things are going well with that application process, by the way. I can get into more detail if you like on that. And zone 16, since that project, that zone is funded through a FEMA Cal OES, that one we cannot proceed with that until we complete the phase 2. However, all the CEQA documentation and reports and all of them are completed on the zone as well. But because of the grant, and the grant requires a FEMA and NEPA oversight of that proposed project, we have to wait for that as well. So once we get that completed, then we'll get that on the schedule as well.
Great. So come July, we'll have everything other than 16
That is correct.
going, right?
That's
Good.
correct.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, you guys do a really good job, I know, with this program, and it's so important from a fire safety standpoint. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kemp, did you have a question for staff?
Yeah, I just had a question about communication. I think what we should do as we get ready for these fuel mods, we should put them in our email blasts, because people don't go to the website that often. And we just put them in our, here's what region, maybe the map of the region, which ones are up next, so people know. The other thing I was wondering is so Bluebird Canyon, of course, we had that unauthorized fuel mod fire last year. So what do we have to do in that area? I noticed, we were up there last weekend, and I noticed that there's a lot of vegetation back on the hill. I know there was going to have to be some restoration, but what else do we need to do there?
So I'm not totally sure what's happening with that. I know that I believe Public Works and the city attorney's office was working on that. I'm not exactly sure what will be done in that area. As far as fuel mod, we would continue with fuel mod as normal, as long as we're not concerned with any erosion or stuff like that. So, but as far as the actual burned area, I can't speak to that.
Just a quick follow-up question. On the governor's executive order, what fuel modification zones does that apply to? And then two-part question, when does that executive order end? And if it were to end, would it make sense to apply through the CEQA and the coastal development permit process concurrently?
The window period for that application was over October of last year, I think it was, or December.
So they extended it to.
Yeah, they extended until May of this year. However, we do have our application in. We've got positive feedback from them. They've asked for additional information, which we're very confident that, which the deadline for submission of that additional information is March 17th. So we will respond with the last corrective information that they requested. So after March 17th, they have about 60 days to give us a final answer on that, under that emergency declaration. And that would include up to 14 zones that would be expanded. That means up to 32 acres of expansion areas.
And so is the idea that once, so assuming we get approval, which it sounds like based on the preliminary comments, we will, does that approval, like how long does that approval last? Or is that contingent on how long because I understand that the executive order, it provides a window in which someone can submit an application, but does it mean that in perpetuity, you don't have to go through the typical CEQA and Coastal Commission processes?
Thank you. Yes, so the waivers for up to 2 years of the waiver of the requirements, environmental requirements. And as far as upon completion of the 2 years, at the end of 2 years, we're still waiting to get more answers, clear answers from the state to see if that would remain, that expansion area would remain in perpetuity or not. We have a feeling, we've gotten some feedback from Coastal Commission that it may be in perpetuity. We're hoping, but we don't have a definitive response on that one.
And just to clarify, so 2 years from the time that we have an approved application, we get 2 years of approval? Or is it 2 years?
It's 2 years from the start of the work,
Okay.
actually.
So then we'd have 2 years at least to figure out a solution. Maybe, Dave, that's where our lobbyists could come in to look at a legislative solution, which would be the best way. Because you never know what's going to happen. There's going to be a new governor, and
Right.
so it's always good to have that
Correct.
permanence. But it's great that we're taking advantage of that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, well, any public comments on this? None? Bring it back. Do I have a motion?
Move the recommended action.
All in favor?
Second.
No second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thanks, Bob, for bringing attention to that item. A lot of good questions.
Thanks for a good report. We appreciate it.
We'll move on to regular business, starting with number 14, Hospital Action Plan.
This next item is item 14, Hospital Action Plan. Emery, I don't know if you could do a late PowerPoint for me. It's really brief because the action plan itself is fairly bulleted. So next slide, please. So let me back up a tiny bit. This is in regards to the ad hoc committee, which is council members Renaki and Whalen, and they asked to work on with the anticipated changes to Mission Hospital Laguna Beach to work on how would the city approach this independently. So that's outlined in the staff report in the attachment, but just for your screen, on the screen, it includes things like summarizing and agree upon all the relevant data. And we're gathering that right now between police and fire and dispatch and what Mission and the ER sees. It should all be the same data, but we want to make sure we agree upon that. For instance, who is taken when, what hours, who is diverted where, for what purposes, and kind of what the trends are. The action plan talks about 2 input groups. One is internal and one is a community input group. And the council will want to kick around how to identify those community members who would do that. It talks about engaging some expert assistance, probably legal, probably real estate, to help us with both the city's position in terms of the overall closure and changes, as well as maximizing the opportunities on the site as it changes. And then another key goal is having really good communications with the community, with the hospital, with all the stakeholders, and then gathering zoning information about the site, and then evaluating all the different options that might be presented by Mission at first, to make sure that especially the preservation and retention of emergency room services are prioritized. Next steps is my next slide. You'd want to kind of not identify the persons tonight, but talk about how you might want to appoint those individuals. And then we would go and develop a timeline for the work product and series of meetings. And then talk about identifying some funding for that consultant assistance that I mentioned. Again, on the real estate side and the legal side. With that, I'll turn that back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions from Dave on this, council? None? Do we have any public comments on this?
John Thomas. I appreciate the work the subcommittee has done so far on this. It's a good start. But I worry that for years we've been lulled into a sense of complacency by repeated assurances from Mission that everything is going to be fine, that we don't need to worry until the latest bombshell. Looking back, it seems the Laguna Beach campus has been gradually hollowed out, and the current situation feels like the result of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's worth remembering that the original hospital was built through a community-wide effort to save lives. And it may take that same kind of community effort again to protect healthcare in Laguna Beach. As we plan for the future, I believe we should start by asking residents what we ideally want at the hospital site in a perfect world, without immediately limiting the conversation with constraints like cost or regulatory barriers. Do we want anything less than a hospital capable of handling whatever is thrown at it? We also need to understand clearly what we lose if Mission proceeds with its current plans. We may be told that maintaining an emergency department capable of handling serious events like heart attacks and strokes is unrealistic. But what the community really needs to hear is this: what would it take to have the level of care that we want? Once we know that, this community can go to work and do what's necessary. Along the way, we should question everything: the $350 million estimate and the 2030 deadline. Laguna Beach is not the only community facing hospital closures because of that requirement. Some estimates, credible estimates, suggest up to 25% of California hospital beds could be at risk. Rand Corporation did a study saying 10 to 20,000 out of 80,000. If that's the case, will the state really allow that to happen without reconsidering the timeline? I appreciate the direction the subcommittee is taking. My suggestion is simply that our focus should be on determining what the community wants and how we get there, not just what we're told that can't be done. Let the community's vision guide the plan, and I'm happy to help if I can.
Thank you. Other speakers on this topic?
And Christoph, I support what John just said. Since I've been in South Laguna for over 50 years, I've heard many times the imminent demise of the hospital, and somehow we always manage to prevent it from happening. And I think it needs to happen again. We've bought it probably 3 or 4 times over with our community donations. And somehow our donations went for naught and were turned over to the next hospital operator when they couldn't build the cancer center, yet they had a reserve of funds. And somehow Adventist got the funds and we didn't get a cancer center, and now our hospital is threatened. There's a lot of things that have happened with the finances of the hospital which are questionable, and we shouldn't allow this to happen anymore. It reminds me of the loss of the museum, or purported loss of the museum, and how the community came together and said, no, we're not losing our museum. What does it take not to lose it? And that's what we have to do with the hospital. I have a letter from the South Laguna Civic Association, which we discussed in our board meeting last night. And they're saying that South Laguna Civic was instrumental in the establishment of the hospital in Laguna Beach. And we've always strongly supported its continuing presence here. In doing the History of South Laguna book, I came across a whole evidence of the kinds of work that South Lagunans did back in 1958 and 59 to help pay for the hospital. They had to pay for half of it. The community had to raise half the funds. And the other half came from a federal grant. And they did it by talent shows and chicken dinners and bake sales. And somehow it came together and they built this hospital. So we need to band together again. So the Civic Association is asking that South Laguna Civic be involved in any committees that are going to be studying this. And we want to really dedicate ourselves to trying to find a really good solution for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Christine Park. I'm here as a concerned citizen and also happen to be a physician in practice in Laguna Beach for the last 26 years. And I'm grateful for the community support that I've had so far, and I'd like to support the community in return. My concern with urgent care is that it is a business model, and it allows patient selection by insurance. And if you do not have insurance, you would not be able to access the urgent care. The second issue is that because it is urgent care, if your insurance is not in network with Providence, then you will be, again, not be able to access urgent care. And the model that includes urgent care as part of a primary care complex that includes laboratory data, X-ray, maybe orthopedics, those are all great concepts, but they cannot do CT scans, MRIs without prior authorization. It has to go through insurance, again, because it's urgent care. It's only in the emergency room setting that you can get the lab results in 1 hour, hopefully less, immediate CT scan, MRI results, and immediate chest X-rays, all the X-rays you want. So I don't think that the acuity level is something that we can mess with. We try to be safe. We err on the side of the safety when we make these judgment calls for our patients. And I think that it's always a good idea to have extra room for your ER capacity. As it stands, I realize that the argument is that the ER volume is so low that everybody else can pick up the slack. I don't think that's true. I think we have to look at the door to doctor time. So a lot of our patients go into the emergency room, check in, and they wait several hours to see a doctor before they get any results. And I think those things have to be looked at. We also have to look at the wall time. I think it's called ambulance waiting to unload a patient to hand off, and that's also a time that needs to be looked at. So we have several urgent clinics in Laguna Beach. There are 3. There are 3 in Dana Point. There are 3 in San Clemente. They can handle minor things. They can do X-rays, but the ER is there to assure patients that they can assess.
You can continue.
So that they can go back home with peace of mind that major medical problem has been resolved, because the next time they see a doctor or their doctor, maybe another several weeks down the road. And inappropriate medical workup is really just essence, is really the time when we can reach the correct diagnosis and correct treatment plan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excuse me, could you leave your contact information with the city clerk so we are able to get a hold of you? Thank you very much.
Other speakers?
Hello, I'm Thor. Nice to be here. To address you guys, and of course, I'm always here to address the people, simply because they have the power in their hands through lawful notices. There's nothing that's more of a pillar in any community than a hospital. There's nothing that's more important. And I'm pretty new in this town, yet what I'm seeing is a rampant spending of money. And then now I'm hearing all these things about we can't afford a hospital. It's going to cost too much. And any logical, reasonable man or woman knows about renovations and that it doesn't all have to be done in one shot. Putting a price tag of 300 million when if you were renovating your home, you could start with a bathroom, start with this, start with that. There are always ways. There are so many intelligent people in this community to be able to put that together. And again, I don't know the details, so I can't speak to each and every one of your activity involved in this, other than I find it flabbergasting that this is even a question that's coming up when $8 million for a sidewalk is going and $8 million for this. And she had also mentioned about some of the things that have been promised to the people that now are not happening the way that you guys had said. Bob, I hope that's real important for you. I don't have your attention, sir. And I think it's very important that each one of you take this very seriously, okay? Because lawful notices can bring claims against the people that cause harm. And taking a hospital away from this community causes harm. There's no question about that. Anybody with a brain between their ears knows a hospital being removed here will cause harm. And my neighbor up in Arch Beach Heights just fell 2 weeks ago, 85-year-old woman. Didn't want to go to the hospital because she said it was too much of a hassle. And I had to talk her into blood all over her white hair. I had to talk her into going to the hospital. And thank God, she got a CT scan. She got in and out of there in 2 hours. It was wonderful. She couldn't say better things about this hospital. And that's something worth saving. There's nothing else that should go before protecting this hospital. Nothing. There's children here. There's elderly here. And so that's pretty much what I want to say. Thank you for my time.
Thank you. Other speakers on this agenda item?
Good evening, City Council. Greg Viviani. I was at the ER recently. I had an eye infection or allergic reaction with my eyes. I think I mentioned this at a previous City Council meeting, but most recently I had severe stomach pain. Like this was 4 days ago. I thought I was dying. I don't know what it was. I was freaking out and ended up in the ER there. I was in and out of there in like 3.5, 4 hours. And they said that I just had a severe case of food poisoning. And it was the worst feeling in the world. I thought I was having like a, my intestine was rupturing my stomach, or I don't know, but they did full CT scan, put me through the system, in and out of there. It was real fast, really, convenient. And just to go from, South Laguna right to there immediately was, that sense of, relief and like knowing, okay, I'm not dying. I don't have, any ruptures happening. And they're like, yeah, this is what's going on. I think it's very valuable. Obviously there's other way more critical emergencies that happen that we need to look after our elderly and just accidents and whatever we can do to, move it forward. I think the action plan looks pretty good. And thank you guys for taking the time to go through that. So thank you.
Thank you. Happy you're on the mend. Other speakers? None? Bring it back to council.
I can just start. I think that this is, I think I agree with a lot of the comments about how having a hospital in town is such an important thing. And we have to, it's important that as a community, we articulate what the city's position is about any next steps that are to occur there. And then look at the tools that we have at our disposal, because we're not the operators of the hospital, but we are the land use entity that oversees the land use associated with the hospital. And we also are, I think, clearly impacted by, I agree with what John Thomas said about questioning all of the assumptions and coming up with our own data-driven approach to understanding what are the real life impacts on the hospital. One of the fallacies that I've heard so far in this process is the idea that there's only a certain number of people who actually need to go to the ER where they could otherwise go to urgent care. And I think one of the problems with with that analysis is one, that's still a significant number of people that have to go to the ER. But I think a lot of people go to the ER with the idea that they have a serious emergency, and they might not have a serious emergency, but the only way that they know that they don't have a serious emergency is going to the ER. So I do think that this will be a very data-driven approach to really understand what are the implications here as sort of step one, and then as the next step, understanding what are the tools that we have at our disposal in terms of leverage and collaboration, and then to the other point that was made about understanding all the specific goals and ideas of the community. And ideally, once we articulate that vision, we have all the brain power in this community that can mobilize to help us effectuate that. One of the things that Bob and I, in working with the city manager on this action plan, wanted to tee up for the council's input on was how we would go about forming the committee, whether we would do the process that we typically do for all of our city committees where everyone comes and interviews here, or if we do the approach that I know was done for the land trust, where the ad hoc committee interviewed members. So that was something that Councilmember Whalen and I wanted feedback on. But I appreciate all the members of the public that spoke, and I appreciate the work that staff has done to really bring this forward quickly and move forward with next steps.
Go ahead.
No, I agree with all of what Alex said. And I think we've got a good framework outlined here. I think John put it right on the money, which is, what does the community want? And we've got to ascertain that and then strive for that. So I think we've got the framework here. As Alex said, we do want some input on how you'd like to select community members to serve on, as a liaison group to us. And then we've got the internals committee as well that I think is already easy to bring together. So there's, and then I guess, Dave, in terms of the RFP process, I think you had this slated, this would be the 26-27 budget. So I suppose we could start pulling together RFPs and time them such, huh?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and I would suggest, if there are members of the public, I know we've got a lot of folks in the medical world. As you can see there, one of the RFPs we're looking for assistance on is with the hospital, potential hospital closure process. We want a consultant in the healthcare area that's smart about, the rules and the regulations and what we can do as a city, what the hospital has to comply with as a hospital operating in our city. So if you can get a hold of the city manager's office, if anybody has firms in mind that we should solicit for an RFP on that. I kind of think that in terms of selecting the community members, I've thought about it a little bit since we put the agenda item together. I kind of suggest we bring it back to the full council. It's a important issue, and we all may have different, inputs on it. So that would be my suggestion.
Is there
Thanks,
any,
Bob.
would there be?
Councilmember Kemp, please.
Okay. Is there anything that would preclude some of the mission hospital employees from participating, like Dr. Park or Dr. Dodge? I don't know if they would have anything with mission to
Not from our perspective. I mean, they'd have to sort through,
any conflicts or anything.
with mission, but
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can, Dr. Rubel had suggested he was interested in participating as well. So, and I think that there are other people associated with the clinic that also had indicated that there's some interest as well, and they're within the industry. So it would definitely be worth reaching out to him and getting some input from him. So I think the community, it's pretty obvious where we're at in the community when it comes to this. And I think I do have confidence that we're going to do everything possible to make this right for the community. Bob, I do have a question for you. You've been up here for a long time, and Ann brought up a good question about the contributions that the community made to the hospital. I'm just curious, is there a way to ever reconcile that? I guess she said that we paid for half of the original one and there's all these money donated. did that just all go away when the hospital changed hands over the years, or?
I don't really know, but I think, yeah, probably so. I mean, those were prior owners. So it just, just
That might be worth,
disappeared into history, right?
yeah,
So-
might be worth looking at when you guys get into it. Anyway, city manager, did you want a motion on this?
I think to approve the recommended action, and then with the understanding that we would bring back to you a separate item that would discuss an appointment process for the community membership, right? Versus bringing back the candidates themselves, more of a process and who might be invited.
Could we just figure out the timeline of that and then just have that go through the city clerk's?
Sure.
office? So we don't have to have like, it sounds like there's clear direction, unless I'm hearing a dissenting view that we want the council to vote on it. So maybe Bob and I could, working with you, figure out what the right timeline is for that, and maybe how
Okay.
many members, and then just have that go through the clerk's office, and then the people who apply would come back to council. Just to take
sounds good to me.
one step out of the process.
Yeah.
Good idea.
The one interesting thing when I was in Sacramento, there was someone who used to work, who just had some insights on all this. And what he was saying to me was that the seismic requirements, it doesn't mean that right now, if there was a huge earthquake at the hospital, it could potentially fall down. It means maybe some of the lights wouldn't work. Right? So like which I always understood the seismic requirements to mean, which are kind of what I would agree with, is I don't want there to, when there's an earthquake, for the hospital to fall down. So that's something that we should dive into more. But I just thought that was an interesting piece of wisdom that I heard from somebody. So,
So the building could be standing up, but you'd have a.
but you'd have a couple light. Well, yeah, but then there's others. And then there's AQMD issues with So I don't know. That's, I think, something we could work through further, because it kind of changes the conversation a little bit about, what the state could potentially do there if it doesn't truly mean that the building is going to collapse. So anyways, I would make the motion to move the recommended action, and then add a sub item to have the ad hoc committee or have the city manager and the ad hoc committee work with the city clerk on timing for a community advisory committee as part of this, to be interviewed and selected by the council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to number 15.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to?
Please.
All right. So this is an update to the City Council's Policy and Procedures Manual, and it's being presented as the Comprehensive Policy and Procedures Manual, but this really is a result of a change to state law, which is SB 707. And that is the new state law that it did a lot of things, to be honest. It was the most substantive amendment to the Brown Act that we had seen in decades. But one of its most significant changes is a change to city council meetings so that effective July 1 of 2026, eligible legislative bodies, which is a defined term in the Brown Act, which I'll get to in just a second, eligible legislative bodies now need to have a remote participation option available for their meetings. And so in preparing for having that remote participation option available, staff also considered the overall meeting organizations and other potential efficiencies that the city council could adopt as policy matters to help make sure that its meetings stay streamlined while we have an increased in participation, likely through remote participation. And so the discussion item before you will talk about a disruption policy, which is a requirement of SB 707. We'll also discuss updates to the City Council's policy on meeting organization, a proposed new policy for appeals, an update to the City Council's policy relating to its regular meetings to add for the provision of remote participation, and then various other cleanup updates that come along. So just briefly, SB 707, as I mentioned, is a rather significant change to the Brown Act. Goal was really to modernize public meeting participation in light of changes to technology, And its key changes include the requirement for two-way remote participation for eligible legislative bodies. Eligible legislative bodies is a defined term that, for purposes of the city of Laguna Beach, only applies to the city council. So these proposed changes are only for the city council. And for eligible legislative bodies, they will need to allow the public to attend and comment via telephonic or audiovisual platforms. There's expanded teleconferencing framework, which it just reorganized the rules for remote meeting participation. There's a requirement for public outreach and accessibility requirements, which includes efforts to encourage participation from underrepresented communities. There is a new transparency and notice requirement relating to improved access to agendas, meeting information, and public participation instructions. And then there is an extended just cause provision, which was just cause is about the legislative body members' participation via the remote platform that came about as a result of COVID. This law just extends the use of that. And so the implications for SB 707, specifically for Laguna Beach, as I mentioned, the city council is under the definition of eligible legislative body, is the only legislative body in the city that has to comply with these specific requirements, being the remote meeting requirements. There are more general requirements that apply to all legislative bodies, which is what I was more or less discussing on the last slide. And so effective July 1, the city council meetings will need that remote participation requirement. The city council must also adopt a written policy addressing disruptions to the audiovisual platform or telephonic platform, so the remote meeting platform. And that disruption policy, the name's a little misleading. The disruption is about the disruption to the internet service or the phone service that's being provided. That's not, and we often have talked about disruptions occurring from the use of remote platforms, more in the lines of Zoom bombing and everything else. The disruption policy doesn't address that. The other policy changes that we are recommending are intended to help mitigate the risks associated with those kinds of disruptions. There's also a requirement for outreach, which, as discussed in the staff report, the city clerk is going to document those efforts to prove that the city is engaged in the required outreach efforts. And there's an update to the remote meeting platforms. So if we get into then what we have to do here. So the first step is the disruption policy. That is the policy required by SB 707. We have to adopt that. And so in the packet is a new policy 1.7. And so if I can just step back briefly, the city council has an adopted city council policy and procedures manual. And over the years, it was a couple years ago, the city council created that policy manual. It took various policies that had been adopted and collected them and put them together. And then since then, the city council has adopted other policies, but they haven't very clearly been packaged together. So part of this is also a cleanup effort. We're trying to get it all together in one place and make it coherent and transparent so that everyone could see what the policies are. So this proposes a new policy 1.7. And basically, like I said, it addresses what happens in the event that there's a failure of telephonic or internet service during the meeting. And the process is effectively that the mayor or the city clerk announces the disruption. For at least an hour, staff needs to attempt to try to fix it. So if this occurs, we'll have to take an hour-long recess while staff tries to fix it. If it is remedied in less than an hour, we can obviously start our meeting. If service can't be restored in that time period, we either need to make findings, the city council will need to make good faith findings that attempted to resolve it and wasn't able to, or we'll need to adjourn the meeting to a future date. So that's the disruption policy. The reason you need the disruption policy is because SB 707 requires remote participation. And so an additional change to the city council policy manual is in policy 1.3. That policy currently establishes the time and location for regular council meetings. It's proposed to be renamed establishing time and location for regular council meetings, remote participation, previously that policy had said the had indicated that there was, if the council decided there could be use for a remote platform, and now clarifies that a remote platform will be used starting July 1, consistent with SB 707. That under SB 707, the city council can either provide remote participation via a two-way audio visual platform, so something like a Zoom, or a two-way telephonic platform, so just phoning in. And the statute or the policy is drafted, currently has brackets around it and is like, what do you guys want to do about this? So that is a question for the city council is, do you want to utilize the audio visual? Do you want to use a telephonic platform? An alternative would be to leave the language as is and then just specify on the agenda how you want to do it. And there are pros and cons. This, to some degree, is about what kind of, the consideration here is what kind of disruption you could potentially have through the remote platforms. For example, on the one hand, if you have a two-way audio visual platform, you could have a Zoom bombing where graphic material appears on the screen. So what do you want to use just the telephone approach to avoid that? The flip side to the telephone approach is you have far less control over understanding who's calling in terms of identifying that users aren't repeating their comments or the same person isn't making multiple comments again and again. That will be harder to track with a telephonic platform. So there is a policy consideration with that. We will come back to that question. In addition, other efforts to help control or to address the change in the meeting participation, including remote participation, is staff has proposed having a dedicated appeals day. This is to help address that our meetings already go quite late often. And it's anticipated that with remote meetings, they may go later. And so staff has proposed a policy, which would be new policy 1.8, which recommends a quarterly appeals day, which would be a special meeting at which a maximum of 3 appeals could be heard on that day. Remote participation will be allowed as part, because it's required for the city council, will be part of those meetings. In addition to that timing component of the council meetings and the efficiencies, there's a couple other recommendations as part of this policy, which is the recommendation is to not allow for continuances and just to schedule this appeals for the appeals days. It's also, the city council currently has a policy that appeal staff reports should be posted 2 Thursdays before the hearing, but that actually couldn't find that in a policy anywhere, so it'll be in here now. And there's a recommendation to set a documentary evidentiary deadline. So if materials are coming in, that those need to be submitted the Thursday at 2 p.m. prior to the appeals day, just so that the city council has an opportunity to evaluate those records. And then the final recommendation for this policy is to do an annual update to the appeals fee for cost recovery, but to have the ability for the council to refund the appeal fee when an abuse of discretion is found as part of the appeal. And one of the questions for setting the proposed appeals days in the future would be to do that when the council adopts its annual meeting schedule. Because we're past that in 2026, staff has also recommended 3 appeals days. So we'll come back to this as well. But those recommended days are May 13th, August 6th, and November 5th. There's also, for purposes of efficiency and making sure that the city council gets to its business on each agenda, in terms of integrating remote public comment into the meeting, there are recommended policy changes for policy 1.1. And the primary change here is to recommend that for remote comments for non-agenda items, that those be taken at the end of the meeting, and that in-person participation will remain the same. So if someone is participating remotely on any agenda item, they would comment on the item as it comes up. And then the non-agenda public comment for remote participants would be at the end. There are otherwise just some clarifying changes recommended as part of this policy. And then at the end, it also recommends what's called an estimated timed agenda. That is just recommended and as an opportunity to provide some for planning purposes for both the public and staff and even council in terms of expectation setting about how long staff thinks any particular item would occur. And then some minor changes throughout the policy manual. Otherwise, we've just updated the numbering and the table of contents. We've made a clarifying change on policy 2.2 regarding how the city seal can be used. It was pretty clear how it can't be used, but it didn't really explain how it could be used. An update to the flag policy. I understand that it's the city's historic practice to fly the pride flag on Harvey Milk Day, and that was not in the policy previously. And then there's various minor cleanups. And finally, our favorite copy editor, Councilmember Whalen, had a handful of small changes that he recommended. So on policy 1.1, there was some auto numbering issues. There was some inconsistent references to the Brown Act. He also recommended making consistent the references for the time for public comment. So it's set up that it's 3 minutes for each item as may be shortened or extended at the discretion of the mayor for all the items, for non-agenda public items, consent, regular business, and public hearings, just to make all of that consistent throughout the policy so it's clear. To replace the word procedures in paragraph N with reference to the specific policy, which is policy 1.8, and to clarify internal cross-references such as if we refer to item I to say item I above. And then on policy 1.3, when we refer to SB 707, refer to the specific statute because as he rightly notes, SB 707 happens every year. So it will be a different law next year. On section 5, just to clarify that to add a section 5, just to clarify that special meetings occur in accordance with the Brown Act. So we call special meetings how the Brown Act requires. Policy 2.1 is just to clarify that if the mayor pro tem is not available, that the mayor can delegate his or her duties to another council member to attend on his or her behalf. Policy 2.3 to note that city council compensation may be amended in accordance with state law. It currently just says what the amount is and doesn't make reference to how it can be changed. And then policies 3.1 and 3.2, he had a handful of small clarifying changes, which I can run through, but they're largely just like being more specific. So for example, in section 2, he recommends saying, for example, that instead of the appropriate committee to say city committees as determined by the city manager, and some clarifying changes in section 3.5, 3.6, and 3.72, just to be more specific. And similar changes on policy 3.2 in section 3.3.5, just to say for art donations that the donations of the artwork will be subject to guidelines as contained in the public art ordinance, which will be when adopted by the city council. And one other change in 3.5.2. And so with that, these are the recommended actions for this item, including to adopt the policy manual, the amended and restated policy manual, both as included in the staff report and as further recommended for amendments per Councilmember Whalen, including the new policies 1.7 and 1.8 to provide more direction about the appeals days for 2026, to provide direction about the two-way audiovisual versus telephonic platform use, and then the final thing was to direct staff to return at the end of the year just to see how this is all working. We're kind of it's going to be a little bit of an iterative process, I think, in terms of trying to figure it all out and what's best and how best to adjust to this change in law. And then finally, to find that this is not a project under CEQA.
Thank you. Any questions of council? None?
I'll wait with mine.
Any public comments on this issue?
And Christoph, I just wondered, you said only 3 appeals per meeting. What happens if you have more appeals? And, and how does this meet the time deadline that I guess the state imposes for hearing appeals? Thank you.
I feel like I'm a fixture, Pat Minna. I have been present during the whole Zoom mess and being, for lack of better words, bombed with the outside calls. And we do need to go back on Zoom. I didn't really understand this. I'd like to have, can we go back on Zoom? It takes a lot of energy to be here at 5 p.m. I'm still really young and vital, but there's a lot of people that are home that really want to be a part of our city. And Zoom is that opportunity. And for me, putting Zoom back in, if you have the episode or the emergency or the bomb that's going off, handle it when it's happening. Whether you need a written procedure on what to do, whatever you have to enlist, but we do need to get back on Zoom because you have a lot of residents, a lot of voters that still want a say in the beautiful town that we live in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
It's just a simple question, clarification. Is the requirement that this start on July 1st, could it start sooner? Is it no later than July 1st, or specifically it is to start July 1st? I think a lot of people would like to see it start sooner if you could.
Hi, Michelle Monda. I've been asking for Zoom since you guys took it off. I don't understand why we haven't had it up to this point. I'm delighted that now you are forced legally by the state of California to reinstate it because I think you've marginalized a lot of people who haven't been able to come down here. And my question is, are you going to put it at the end of public speaking, or are you going to put it at regular public speaking? Because quite honestly, at the end of public speaking, at the end of the meetings, there are very few people watching. So if you're going to marginalize them even further by putting them at the end, I would ask respectfully that you have said you're going to have 45 minutes of public speaking, and I think you should honor that and include the Zoom people in that 45 minutes up front, rather than just saying anybody on Zoom, we're going to put at the end of the meeting. Because as I say, really no one's listening at the end of the night, and you know that. So please reconsider and try to include Zoom speakers in the regular public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. No other speakers. I'll bring it back to council. Would like to start?
Mr. Mayor, did you want me to address? There were a few
Sure.
like
Good idea.
procedural
Thank you.
questions. So Ms. Christoph asked what to do about appeals when there are more than 3 or when they don't meet the deadline. The policy is written to basically address that. So if there's more than 3, it would need to go on to another city council meeting, or if it doesn't comply with the deadline, it will have to go in. The goal is to get as much as possible onto the appeals days, but it won't be exclusively appeals days for appeals as a result of timing and the potential for more than 3. Ms. Minna asked about whether it can be Zoom. Zoom is one audiovisual platform. The city needs to evaluate what platforms are available and potentially go through the procurement process to figure, once there's a direction as to whether it's telephonic, audiovisual, both, whatever. So that's a
A
possible
question, if we're going to have access, we're going to have it. It's just a matter of
of
what
which
platform.
specific platform.
Right.
Correct. And then Mr. Thomas asked if it can be before July 1. It can be. I think the process of procuring the licensure and figuring out, it's going to be pretty close to July 1 just for the city to go through its process.
Thank you. Council comments?
I have a question. So on the appeals, I think ultimately it's going to lead to people being able to have their, whether you're an appellant or an applicant, this is going to allow these appeals to be heard sooner, which I think is a good thing. So I appreciate that, even though it's tough when you have a working schedule to make the 1 p.m., but I can make it work 4 times a year. The other thought is, as I understand it, design review has a process where if you want to have a site visit done by the design review board members, you fill out a form and that lets the design review board know. I'm wondering if my council colleagues are interested in something similar, because I always have a problem where I'll get like an email Sunday night saying, oh, can you come to my house tomorrow or Tuesday? And I can't, because it's harder with my schedule. So I'm wondering if there's a way, or it could just be a note, like a advisory to applicants and appellants saying, please reach out to the council members sooner rather than later, but just something along those lines. Because I always hate when I'm not able, because I'm not going to do a site visit unless I'm prompted to. I'm not going to trespass on someone's property, but at the same time, I want to be able to visit the property and when people want me to visit. So that's just, I guess, a concern that's sort of specific to me, but I think that that's something that I'd be interested in if my colleagues are supportive. And then as it relates to the question of the platform, I think the way we had it before with the Zoom, where it was the audio, I think it was a one-way visual where they could see us, but audio on the side of the people participating. I think that worked well. And, instead of having a new platform that people aren't used to, that might be the simplest approach, is just to use the same platform and same audio visual approach that existed prior to the anti-Semitic comments that were made.
That was my thought as well, but we'll hear from the rest of the council. Did you have any other comment?
That's it.
Sue, did you have?
Can I just
No.
clarify on that comment? Because the SB 707 says it has to be a two-way audio visual platform. So it would be a two-way audio visual platform, but it gives the opportunity to turn the camera off on their end. Is that the idea?
Oh, so what you're saying is that the previous approach would not qualify because it wasn't a two-way, it was a two-way audio platform, but it was a one-way visual platform.
I think that seems like that. If the requirement is to have the camera off, I don't know how it would be two-way.
Last time I remember when I spoke before I was on the council, you couldn't turn, it wasn't like you had the option to turn it off or on, you just could only do audio. And so it sounds like that's not compliant.
I don't think that would comply because of the
Okay.
two-way requirement.
Got it.
Councilmember Kemp, did you have a comment?
Well, would there be some occasions where we would have appeals at a regular council meeting?
Yes.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, so I think for example, if 2 weeks before an appeals day, we get an appeal, or even a month before an appeals day and the appeals day is already full, we can't have that appeal wait until the next appeals day, which would be 90 days or 120 days away. So we will have to have moments where appeals will be put on to either a regular council meeting or you'll have to have a special council meeting.
Bob?
I suggested to the city attorney this afternoon, I don't know if this, we do have to decide on a platform, and to Alex's point, but just for the policy, the procedure, let's just leave it telephonic or, visual. If we end up having issues with the visual that are repetitive, right, we just want to go to a telephonic, and just as determined by the agenda, and then the agenda will have to, clarify which way we're going to go, which, that way we don't have to come back and amend the policy if we want to flip from one to the other.
So Megan, just to be clear for the public, let's say we get Zoom bombed, because cities are still getting Zoom bombed. This has not gone away. This is still a problem. So let's say we had what we had happen last time. We got the Zoom bomb. So we stopped the meeting. So what would we do?
So let's take, for example, a Zoom comment that's occurring on an appeal, right? So if it's for items that are agendized, the public comment, whether in person or on Zoom, has to relate to the agenda item. And so if we're getting Zoom comments on something that is completely unrelated, that is one answer, is to say this is not a related comment. You have to speak to the agenda item. Which is part of the reason that we're recommending that the non-agenda items be at the end of the meeting, so that if we are Zoom bombed on non-agenda items, we could. So I think if you're getting Zoom bombed, if you're having hate speech occur on an agenda item, we will, and it's on Zoom, engage largely in what we did before, take a break, focus on the subject matter, jurisdiction of the city council, the subject matter of the agenda item, and try to be as strict as possible about making sure comments stay on topic.
So 707 really didn't give any direction or relief to curing the problem. They just said, go back and do it and figure it out. If we were to do, so we could require their cameras to be on?
The law requires for two-way audio visual. I don't think you can require that they be off, but I think they could have the option to turn them off if they wanted, or I think we could require them to remain on.
How are we going to address the repetitive, the concern we had last time when we got bombed was we thought maybe it was the same person just, reappearing under a different name. How do we prevent
That's
that?
one way, is to require the cameras to stay on to try to verify that the commenter is a different person.
So is that what staff's proposing? or-
That's one. Well, there's a policy recommendation, and there's a question about whether you want to go telephonic or audiovisual. But if you wanted to use the audiovisual approach, that may be one solution, is to is to say that cameras need to remain on.
And if they don't, then we could not allow them to speak.
Yeah, I think we would attempt to enforce our policy, that our policy requires two-way, consistent with the law, it's a two-way audio visual.
Because I mean, that's kind of the fundamental issue is like we have the First Amendment, which is why this country is so great. But the problem when people are abusing the first, when they're making anti-Semitic comments, but there's no accountability of who is this person that's doing it, that's not the First Amendment working, right? Because the First Amendment is the accountability of speaking your mind, but also the person on the receiving end knowing who the person is and being accountable for their speech. So I would agree.
Well, they
with that.
could say, my camera doesn't work. And I guess, then they just, people say that all the time.
And in fairness,
Cameras.
my Zoom camera hasn't worked for 4 months, for those of you who've been on Zoom meetings with me. So that could be a real excuse. I think we have to have enough, it's our policy, but if someone says that they don't have the ability, we kind of will have to believe them.
Well, remember too, when we were on Zoom before, we had a lot of people, I can't get off mute. I don't know how to turn on my camera. I mean, you're going to have that too. We had a lot of that fumbling around kind of thing.
And what's the downside to just doing telephonic? Or is there?
Yeah.
I think that it may be harder to track the repetitive calls. There may not be and we could, I don't know, we haven't investigated that, every possible platform that could help us if we can trace phone numbers. I'm not technological enough to know how you make it so that your phone number looks different, but I understand that that's a way that's how spam. Yeah. So that is one option as well, is to do the telephonic and see if we can, and to some degree, we'll have to rely on the honor system from those.
Well, can we, I mean, if we adopt the policy tonight allowing either way, right? Can't staff just go off and do some investigation as to platforms and alternatives and and then
certainly
make a decision?
Would you like to form a motion to that effect?
Well, there's more to talk about here, I think, right? Still, so on the appeal day, I'm just going to give my view. I'm not a fan of the appeals days, but I guess others are. 1 o'clock to me is the wrong time. I don't care whether you can zoom in. It's the middle of the workday. It's not fair to neighbors and people who, or Alex or Hallie, and people who have jobs. I mean, if you have 3 appeals, if you started at 3 o'clock, like we normally do on a council meeting, which, by the way, used to be when I first was on 6 o'clock. Now we're back to 3 o'clock. And you have hour and a half for 3 appeals. That's going to be 7 o'clock. That's not extraordinarily late. People can still go home and get dinner. So I would be advocating for 3 o'clock, number one. Number two, we are out of town 1 week this summer on a family vacation, and it's the week of August 6th, so I will not be here. I encourage you to proceed without me, but I will not be here for that. So that's my input on the appeals days.
So you are okay with adding the additional days, just the time?
I didn't say okay. I just.
Okay.
Do we have an estimate of how many appeals we get a year? Because I tend to agree, like I sort of like the idea of just doing the business as usual with the council meetings. And then if there's a need, if we're like in a situation where we have a lot of agenda items, we have a lot of appeals piling up, then just scheduling a special meeting for it. That would be and I totally agree about 3 o'clock versus 1 o'clock for if we were to have the appeals days. But maybe just to reiterate kind of the policy, you know, because I'm open to the other side of that, of why we'd want to have these scheduled days.
So obviously appeals ebb and flow, but I would say historically, we're averaging like 12 to 14 appeals a year.
Okay.
And they're not evenly spaced out, which is one of the challenges in scheduling these as well.
I think the idea, and it certainly can be a more ad hoc process. It does not need to be set dates in advance. I think there was some effort to try to create more consistency and transparency for people that are appealing, and then to stop, because there's a lot of the continuances and it becomes both burdensome for staff to try to schedule it and for the people that are appealing, the applicants. And so having definitive days and just feeling like that's the date for the most part.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. But I like the 3 o'clock idea.
Too. Is that it?
That's it for me. I mean, I'm open to trying it, but I think weren't we going to review this after some point in time?
Yeah.
Yeah, the recommendation is to come back November, December and evaluate how it's going.
Yeah, I think trying it at 3 o'clock is a good approach, and then maybe it doesn't make sense and we correct, or maybe it's the best thing that's ever happened.
I mean, if you want to get one in July, as opposed to August 6th, I mean, July 23rd or something like that was a date where
You're starting to soften a little bit?
well, no, I mean, I can read the tea leaves. So just
Anne Marie, did Mayor Pro Tem Jones give you a calendar? We're trying to, no, okay.
I think you and I talked about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a meeting on, just kind of keeping with the idea of it being generally in the same week as a council meeting. If we did it the 23rd of July, that's 2 days after the 21st, but I don't know how
The
it's scheduled.
23rd works for me. I like that, grouping it with the council meetings.
Why don't we plan on it? We'll check with Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Jones right away when she gets back.
Cool.
Okay. Did you have a comment on another item on the?
No, I don't think so. I mean, with the changes that the city attorney went through, I'm good. I'm good with it.
Recommended changes I'm fine with the recommended changes.
Yeah, and I'll just highlight, I remember when Mark and I went to the City Council Training Academy, there was a whole best practices discussion about the importance of comprehensive policies and procedures in one place, just from a transparency and good governance standpoint. So I really appreciate all the work that went into this.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I guess one question, and on the appeals process policy, which I really like the recommendation of, setting the Thursday before as the last time to get, because we've had so many situations where I think unfairly we get, a 100-page thing dropped on a dais the night of the hearing, right? And you just can't deal with it. It's not possible other than continuing the whole thing. So can we, from a legal standpoint, can we just ignore everything that comes in after the deadline?
I think, Councilmember, from a documentary or record perspective, I think you can say this is the deadline. You obviously during the public hearing take in evidence by people's public comment. So you're not going to ignore that evidence that comes in through people's public comment. It's the goal here is to just set fair rules for you to have the time. To your point, you can't read a 20-page letter when you're sitting at the dais trying to listen to the public comment. So I think it's fair to set a deadline for the papers coming in, but we're not excluding all evidence.
No, I understand. But if somebody comes up and says, here you go, which we get from legal counsel often, right? I'm representing so-and-so, here's my 30-page letter, and hands out 5 copies of it, we can ignore that.
I think we can say that we have a deadline, that this
Yeah.
is, you could
Which is,
put-
I think, only fair to both sides of the hearing. So, okay.
So
Thank you.
So that applies from a CEQA perspective too. If we were to be challenged in a CEQA claim, they could read portions of the letter that they were going to drop off on Tuesday during the meeting. And what they read, that's evidence in the record. But to the extent that they can just drop off a binder or paper, that needs to be done Thursday by 2 p.m.
Correct. I think that that's a fair position for the city to take.
That really doesn't deviate from how we're doing it today, right? It's just,
It doesn't deviate that all, we're still saying we will accept all of your, I should clarify, we have currently for design review and certain, we don't always take in new evidence. Sometimes it's limited to what was presented to the design review board, but assuming it's consistent with our municipal code, we're not changing what you can present to us. We're just saying in order for it to be, the decision makers have the opportunity to actually review it, because otherwise what happens is it's entered into the record without review. And so it's not evidence weighed by the council, but it becomes part of the record.
so it's more clarity.
Correct.
Yes. Okay,
Matt-
then,
Sorry, Matt, did you want to add something?
Yeah, we had an opportunity to look at the July 23rd date, and there's a design review board meeting scheduled that night. Not that we couldn't reschedule that, but one suggestion would be, we looked for quite a lot of different conflicts in coming up with these dates, which makes it hard, is perhaps we set the May and November meeting and give staff an opportunity to find an alternative for that August, and we could bring it back.
okay. And do we need a motion for this?
And just one more piece of clarification. So on the maybe we just have an advisory on the notices for appeals to say, make sure that you invite council members if you want to site visit a certain amount of time.
Oh, right. Would you like that added to the policy that it's that staff will provide that notice to people in advance?
I'm open. I just want there to be a clear process where people understand that if they want a site visit, they should ask earlier.
I'd recommend including it in the policy just so that it's transparent to people.
For everyone involved in the process.
Yeah.
I think that's good too, because sometimes we get this, well, you didn't come to my house. Well, you didn't call us and we
Yeah.
didn't know if you're home or what the story is.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then am I correct in understanding this does not apply to other boards, commissions, and committees, but then maybe that could be something that we would discuss when this comes back at the end of the year first, and we can we focus on implementing it here, and then as we're doing that, we can expand it beyond.
Correct. Councilmember.
You ready for a motion?
I guess we'd move the recommended action on item 2, just scheduling the May 13th and the November 5 appeals dates, starting at 3 p.m.
And for item 1, it incorporates
Incorporating the changes the city attorney went through.
in Councilmember Unagi's proposed change to the appeal policy.
Right.
And the appeal policy would be 3 p.m. as well.
Have a second?
Correct. I'll second.
Oh,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye, approved unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to item 16, a public hearing.
It'll just be a moment until I can share my screen.
Apologies, just one moment and we will bring up the slide deck momentarily.
Zoom problems.
Very fun. One trip to Sacramento. How much time do you think you need?
Hopefully just a few more.
30 more seconds, please.
Okay. Okay, then we'll briefly move on to appeal Alex Renagi's request, which was a good one, in the spirit of saving time. So that's the appeal A. So what are we looking to do here? To reschedule it?
Yes, Mayor. Based on the City Council's adoption of the Appeals Day policy, staff is now recommending that the City Council continue this hearing to your May 13th, 2026 special meeting for appeals.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any comments from council?
So in accordance with the new policy, the staff report has to be posted two Thursdays prior, I guess, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
And I know there's a bunch of updated historic studies going on for this particular project. Will they all be done in time to be appropriately incorporated into the staff report by May 1st, roughly?
Yes, staff will have sufficient time to receive and evaluate that additional information. We have 2 historic consultants currently undertaking an assessment of the project. Those evaluations will be completed either end of this month or beginning of April.
Thank you, Anthony.
Other questions of council? None. Are there any public comments on this? None. Okay. Do I have a motion to postpone?
Move the recommended action to continue the item to the designated appeal day on May 13th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously. Okay, we'll go back to public hearing
Now we're ready to go.
number 16. We're ready for our staff presentation.
We are. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Item number 16 is conditional use permit 25-1036 and coastal development permit 25-2021 for an existing hotel located at 2020 South Coast Highway. The applicant, Benjamin Stevens, an architect for the project, is requesting approval of a conditional use permit and coastal development permit regarding a request to reduce the number of parking of off-street parking spaces based on the implementation of a transportation demand management and parking plan. The request is related to the expansion of an existing hotel located at the southeast corner of South Coast Highway and Diamond Street. The existing development and lot size limits the applicant's ability to provide the additional on-site parking spaces. At the January 21st, 2026 Planning Commission hearing, the Commission voted 4-1 to approve Design Review 2025-1044 and Coastal Development Permit 25-1045 to expand the hotel from the entitled 22 guest rooms to 25 guest rooms. Additionally, the Commission voted to recommend that the City Council approve the required CUP and C2P to reduce the number of required parking spaces by 15% as required as allowed by Laguna Beach Municipal Code Section 2552-006G3. Additionally, the Planning Commission's approval for the design review and coastal development permit related to the expansion of the hotel included a condition of approval which explicitly states that the hotel expansion approval is contingent on the city council's approval of the parking reduction. The city council may approve a conditional use permit and coastal development permit upon recommendation from the commission when a project promotes the use of alternative transportation such as ride sharing, public transit, bicycling, and where the reduction will not adversely affect public access to beaches, parks, open space, or trails. Any proposed innovative parking solution shall provide mitigation measures at an equivalent ratio to the spaces required by Laguna Beach Municipal Code, Section 2552, for the proposed expansion of the hotel. As part of staff's review during the 2021 building plan check process for the hotel's remodel, staff reviewed the history of entitlements and discovered that the hotel was entitled for 21 single guest rooms, 1 2-bedroom suite style guest room, and 1 2-bedroom manager's unit. Staff concluded that at some time prior to the current ownership, the 1 2-bedroom suite had been converted into 2 guest rooms, and the 1 2-bedroom manager's unit had also been converted to 2 guest rooms. Essentially, unpermitted improvements that had occurred prior to the current owner's acquisition had increased the guest room count from 22 to 25. As part of the 2023 building permit approvals, the applicant was required to ensure that the existing entitled conditions were consistent with the previous entitlements. And so the hotel was brought back down to 21 single room guest units, 1 double room guest suite, and 1 2-bedroom manager's unit. As part of the January 26 Planning Commission approval, the hotel will now be able to move forward with the 25 single guest rooms that is with the conversion of existing floor area, and there is no additional square footage being added to the hotel. As a result, the parking demand for these additional rooms has required an addition of 4 spaces, and the applicant is making a request for a reduction of 4 parking spaces pursuant to a proposed transportation demand management plan. The implemented measures to ensure that the parking space reduction will not create any impacts to off-site facilities is ensuring that the hotel will provide bicycles for guest use. They'll be encouraging rideshare by charging for overnight parking. They'll be creating a designated rideshare area for guests, as well as including information encouraging ride sharing on the hotel website. Additionally, local transit information will be provided to guests upon check-in. Since publication of the staff report, 1 letter has been submitted in opposition to the requested parking reduction from a nearby business owner. It shall be noted that the peer-reviewed transportation demand study ensures that the project will not create parking impacts to adjoining properties. Additionally, as part of the 2023 remodel, the current owners expanded the surface parking lot from 12 spaces to 23 spaces, which was an increase of 11 parking spaces. Staff's recommendation is the council approve CUP 25-1036 and CDP 25-2021 and adopt a categorical exemption for the project pursuant to CEQA. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions, as is the applicant.
Thank you. Any questions of staff from council?
Just one question. So on page 98 of the agenda, which is, I think, page 4 of the LSA report, I just want to confirm that what I'm reading this accurately. So it said that only 38%, around 1,700 guests out of approximately 4,600 guests paid the overnight charge, meaning that there's only a utilization rate at night of the parking spaces of around 38%. That's accurate. And so if we did 26, if we looked at 25 rooms times 0.38, that's around 9. So
Yes.
it kind of shows how in sometimes our codes are a lot, the codes are a lot different than what the actual demand is for parking.
Correct. The historical parking demand has been lower than what the parking code requires for hotel uses.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? None? I'll open public testimony, starting with the applicant. Is the applicant here?
Thank you, Shweta, for the presentation. Thank you to the council for hearing our project this evening. My name is Ben Stevens. I'm the project architect, and I'm here with one of the property owners, Blake Marriott, as well as Arthur Black with LSA, who's here to answer any questions related to the TDM that his office prepared. Since staff's presentation was so thorough, I won't be given an additional presentation, but I did want to at least quickly address that one public letter that was submitted to staff a few days ago from the tenant across the street. In the letter, it was mentioned that during the 25 years at that location, that parking has always been a challenge for her clients. We just wanted to make note that the majority of those years, probably 22 or more, the hotel was under previous ownership and the parking situation at the hotel was agreeably not great with 12 code compliant parking spaces. Then under the new current ownership in 2023, we completed a remodel of the hotel where we redesigned the entire parking area in order to maximize every inch possible and increase the parking from 12 to the current 23. And just to clarify, we're not looking to reduce or modify the existing parking count or layout as it stands today. That's it for now, and we're here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public testimony on this item?
And Christoph, I just have a question. It seems like commercial buildings are supposed to get a permit to change color. And I was wondering if there's a permit to change this into black. To me, it's the character of the Spanish style looks pretty strange with black stucco.
Thank you. Any other comments? None? Bring it back to council. Any other comments from council?
Actually, I'm just a little bit off topic, but I had a question for Blake Marriott. If you come up to the mic.
Okay.
Could we just?
Sure.
I just had a question on the, what's the status of, I know with the Sonder issue, you were closed for a while. Can you just update us on the status of the hotel?
Absolutely, and thank you for having me tonight. Sonder filed bankruptcy in November. We are free and clear to operate, and we are trying hard and working swiftly to open by April 15th.
Blake, does that?
Good news, thank you.
Do you guys have the other hotel too? The one at Coast Highway in Bluebird?
I believe you're referring to La Ensenada, which
Yeah.
was operated by Sonder as well. That is not my hotel.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Before you go, Blake, that's good news, as the council noted. So you're able to take reservations now too for those dates, or still holding off on that?
Thank you for asking. That is coming this week.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions before I close public testimony?
And I think to Ann's comment on the paint color, that was approved at DR, right? Separate from this appeal?
Correct. The Planning Commission approval of the
Planning.
design review for the exterior remodel, the 4-1 vote, one vote was in dissent of that color, but the project is not considered Spanish. It's more of an eclectic style, and so it's consistent with that architecture.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council?
No, I'm ready to approve it. I watched the planning commission meeting and I think the staff report's thorough. I think you did a good job on it, so I'm good.
I did note in condition 22, and I'm good with it too, but condition 22 requires, maybe staff could just highlight this. I guess at the 1 and 5 year point, they need to do some updating or just verification that it's all working. Is that going to be sort of another just quick update on what will that comprise? What will that look like?
Sure. Now, that is an administrative process that's required by the municipal code. When an applicant receives a parking requirement reduction through this innovative parking solutions provision, the applicant is required to retain a professional to produce a report at the 1 and 5 year marks to evaluate the effectiveness of the TDM measures. Are they mitigating for the parking lot, the parking loss at an equivalent ratio and avoiding any parking spillover effects offsite in the neighborhood?
So to Councilmember Renagi's point, it seems like the easiest way to do that would just be to monitor, percentage of overnight guests using parking, kind of like that 38% number.
That would be a great metric to use.
Okay, thank you.
I'm supportive of the recommended action. I think it's good that we have this innovative parking provision. The problem with it is I think it adds a whole layer of complexity where you have to go and do a study. So I'm hoping that I don't know if this is a question for that. I know you're working on the comprehensive code update and we're looking at commercial parking requirements. Would that apply to hotels as well? So in the future, we could look at a more realistic demand because people realistically are not going to be, in this case, 38%. But
it does apply to all commercial
So we'll be
uses.
looking at modernizing our parking code to reflect the realities of today's world.
Correct.
Thank you. So I'm supportive of the recommended action. It's always great to see investment in our communities and especially our hotels because it's the best kind of taxes that we get is where residents don't have to pay. So we always appreciate that investment.
That's correct. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the recommended action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to any council member items?
No items.
Okay, meeting adjourned.